Sir, her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of The Peasant's Perspective. I hope you guys are ready for the best episode ever. They say I'm supposed to say stuff like that at the beginning because it kind of sets the stage and the expectation. It's like a form of hypnosis, I guess. So get ready for the best Peasant's Perspective show ever. And actually, believe it or not, yesterday we set some records on views. So that's kind of fun. So thank you for joining me, everybody. I obviously really appreciate it every single day. Frazier, good morning. From damp, feels like Idaho, Idaho. I said, I sent a little rain your way. Pony Boy, good morning. I'm so glad you guys all made it here with me today. Thank you so much. It's starting to, this week is flying by. I can't believe it's already Thursday. This afternoon, I've got the Ignite presentation. Feels like I was just doing it one day ago. My wife's been out of town, so it's kind of felt like this long extended weekend at home with just my son around. It's kind of interesting. Anyways, yeah. Carlitos, good morning. Glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. All right. So we are on day 2 now of the United States government being shut down. Did you notice it? Probably not. I don't think anybody's going to notice the federal government being shut down unless you're not going to work today. A lot of federal workers taking a paid holiday. Now they get paid after the holiday, not before, but a lot of federal workers taking a paid holiday today. Now, over the last couple days, we've been talking about all this drama that's been going on in the White House, right? Between Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. It's been a lot of fun. So we're going to dive into that this morning. But before we do, I want to introduce you guys to something called Morning Kick. So Morning Kick, hey there. There's this video. It's from Chuck Norris. Yeah, it was insane. He's in his 80s and says he still feels like he's in his 50s. It was pretty shocking. He had some pretty cool tips in there, too, on what he's doing, including these 3 foods that he avoids like the plague. He explained all the things he was doing, and it was super simple. And they're so easy, and you can do them right at home. When I first saw this, I knew I had to share this with you. Since what happened to Chuck could also happen to you, but with any new method, of course, your results can vary. But this video is definitely worth checking out. Watch this method by clicking the link in chat or scanning the QR code on your screen. You will not believe how simple it is. So take a look at that. It's called Kickstarter. Is that, I got that right? Anyways, take a look, follow the QR code. You guys will have fun. Tell me how awesome it is. Okay, glad to knock that out. All right, so now we jump right in to the government shutdown and the petty back and forth between Donald Trump and Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats. This is so funny to me. This is going back to that meme with Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer wearing the sombreros and the little Mexican mustaches. Oh, it was so fun. It's hilarious how much stuff Donald Trump is able to get the Democrats and the mainstream media to latch onto.
So we played sound from Vice President Vance, not just defending that AI racist video of Minority Leader Jeffries wearing a sombrero, but also like celebrating that video. And it was playing on a loop in the briefing room today. What are you hearing from the inside about that?
It was not only just playing on a loop in the briefing room. If you've never been in the press briefing room, for those who haven't, there are loudspeakers overhead so you can hear.
Just for a moment, think about how petty the Trump administration is when dealing with the Democrats. They're so petty. It's hilarious. They're done with it.
Announcements or what's being said, or if there's an event going on with the president in the Rose Garden, for example, they were playing that mariachi music as well over the loudspeakers for all the press that was coming in and out of the White House today inside the press briefing room. It just kind of gives you a window, John, into...
Can you believe that as you're walking into the White House press briefing room, you know, like one of the most important places on the planet, and mariachi music in the background. It's so funny.
How they're dealing with this and how they believe they have the upper hand when it comes to the messaging here, and also kind of how things have changed from the first time Donald Trump was in office. I mean, there was a shutdown then. I remember all 35 days of it. As the president said at the beginning, he'd be proud to shut the government down. And then it ended, obviously, with him not getting the money for his border wall. This time, you know, there's a moment here. They're being heavily criticized over these posts by the president, by Democrats. And instead of...
You think it's funny? He ended up not getting the money for his border wall, which ended up billing, and you guys conceded needed to be built by the time 2024 ran around. So thanks for shutting down our government for 35 days to keep us from getting that border wall we all wanted.
Backing off or apologizing for it, they're leaning into it, and they're playing the music over loudspeakers and on repeat inside the briefing room because they simply don't care about that criticism.
Nope, they don't care about your tears anymore. What's that? Facts don't care about your feelings. So this was JD Vance. He made a visit into the briefing room and answered some questions about the memes and Hakeem Jeffries and all these guys. This is hilarious.
Just going back to the sombrero. You said that the president's joking, but Hakeem Jeffries says that these memes were racist. What's your response to that? And just if I may briefly go off topic, Secretary Hegseth yesterday made an edict about no more beardos in the military. Just wondered what.
Sorry, what did he say?
No more beardos.
Beards.
Sorry, that's my accent. Just wondered your response to that.
I didn't see that particular comment. I thought Pete gave a hell of a speech, and a speech that really is just oriented around returning the American military to the very high standards that it has had for virtually its entire history until Joe Biden came along and decided to lower standards. I think it was bad for our military, and it was bad for our troops. When I was a young United States Marine, I did not have a beard. I am now the vice president, so I get to do what I want to do. But I think Pete's trying to re-implement high standards, and that's a very good thing. On the sombrero thing, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries said it was racist, and I know that he said that, and I honestly don't even know what that means. Like, is he a Mexican American that is offended by having a sombrero meme? I mean, I saw one of the major TV stations put the meme up and then say, this is AI generated. They had like the curly animated mustache too. It's like, do you really not realize the American people recognize that he did not actually come to the White House wearing a sombrero and a black curly animation mustache? Like, give the country a little bit of credit. We're all trying to do a very important job for the American people. The President of the United States likes to have a little bit of fun when he's doing it, and I think that's okay.
These baby memes overplayed on serious press briefings and stuff like that are the best thing that has ever happened to the internet. Anytime I can play a baby meme over the actual video footage, it's just better for you, right? Now, this drama around Donald Trump and his memeing and his speech at the Pentagon and no more beardos, right, is just driving the left insane. I cannot remember this woman's name. She turned around and got onto, I think it was MSNBC, and gave a talking hit and basically said this same thing that she said to Mike Johnson in the halls of the Capitol. I don't know if she knows she's on mic or not. I think she does. In fact, I know she does because look, she's mic'd up. In fact, let me show this to you so you can see it with me. All right. So if you look at her here, she knows she's mic'd up. You see this mic that's on her back. So she knows she's mic'd up. So this is performative, but this is the talking point.
The president is unhinged. He is unwell. What are you doing?
Folks on your side are too. I don't control.
Oh my God, please. That performance in front of the general.
I didn't.
Can you guys hear me? All right. Sounds like I'm back. All right. I don't know what happened. My audio died. Probably some kind of internet thing. I'm going to go ahead and keep playing here.
That performance in front of the generals, that
I didn't see it.
is so dangerous. You know I serve on foreign affairs and appropriations. This is a collision of those two things. Our allies are looking elsewhere. Our enemies are laughing.
I just left.
You have a president who is, you have a president.
Okay. So now the question is, let me stop sharing that. Hopefully my audio comes back. Hey, someone drop in the chat if the audio is okay there. Not AI. Yes, that is very true. Okay. So she's saying our enemies are laughing at us, right? Other nations are looking elsewhere. So presumably Russia or China for support or whatever. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not. on one hand, you have the administration saying this is a new era. People are coming to us. They want to negotiate. And then on the other hand, you have people like her who even in private, allegedly, that really wasn't private. She was probably knew she was performing, right? That is their talking point. Now, I have a hard time believing that the world is looking elsewhere or thinking that we can't fulfill our military obligations now after the Hegseth and the Trump speech as compared to before. This is from a little over a year ago. This is a colonel in the United States Air Force, I believe. In fact, this might be Space Force, actually, talking about diversity. And clearly, this is a trans woman.
All too often, I hear leaders talk about providing everyone with dignity and respect like it's an aspirational goal. That's not good enough. Dignity and respect is the bare minimum. It's the floor of where we can be. We must set our sights higher and focus on intentional inclusivity because there are still far too many people out there, not just LGBTQ individuals, that feel marginalized, shut out, or discriminated against. So for all of you out there, I ask you to set out your symbols of pride, share your pronouns in your email, particularly if you're a person who doesn't think they need to. Initiate difficult conversations about racial and gender barriers, and share a bit of your vulnerability in a way that draws others in. You all have the power to take intentionally inclusive actions to ensure the multiple perspectives that we know make us stronger as we devise winning warfighting strategies get heard.
What? Right? So now they're concerned about the appearance of our military, whereas when you have that, right, the diversity of opinions in war, the Department of War, there's one thing that matters: effectiveness. Do you win or not? Because by the time you involve the Department of War, it's a zero-sum game. Okay? Like, that's the whole point. You're shooting each other. It's a zero-sum game. So you've got to win. Okay? So this is one of those deals where you just look at it and you're like, what are these people thinking? Did they think this projected strength? Oh, hey, we're going to do this battle plan because it was drawn up by a transgender and we like their inclusive ideas. Is it a good battle plan or not? Why do I care who it came from? See, this is the disconnect between people who live in like fantasy and people who live in reality. Business owners, some can live in fantasy, but most of them live in reality. It's about the bottom line. Do you make me money or lose me money, right? Business owners become very sensitive to things like family corporate welfare. Business owners become really sensitive to things like a lost leader where you're paying money to bring in leads and you might lose money if they don't convert, right? They analyze everything in terms of black and white, effective, ineffective, right? So when we get there and I see a colonel nonetheless, talking about diversity and about being inclusive and no, right? It kind of goes with Donald Trump yesterday. In his speech, he talked about being unable to say the N-word. Now, this is a very controversial little meme video here, but I found it very, very funny because it's freaking hilarious. And it made me laugh because this is basically, if I could play this in prison, I could make basically everybody in there laugh. Even the black guys would laugh at this because it's freaking hilarious. So the caption here is FBI crime statistics. It's Jeopardy. They make up 13% of the population, but commit 50% of the crime. So what is the answer?
They make up 13% of the population, but commit 50% of the crime.
That word, I call it the N-word. There are two N-words, and you can't use either of them. You can't use either of them.
They make up 13%.
Obviously, the N-word he was referring to is nuclear. Anyways, okay. So we are officially in government shutdown, and Mike Lee was on with, I think this was Laura Ingraham. Yeah, Laura Ingraham. And he's talking about Russ Vought, who's the director of Office of Management and Budget. And he is in charge of all the cuts. And now that we are officially in shutdown mode, Russ Vought has a lot of power, and he has a lifelong mission that he is about to embark upon.
But this is what they're doing. They're doing it deliberately. It's going to harm them. Because Russ Vought, the OMB director, has been dreaming about this moment, preparing this moment since puberty. Russ Vought has a plan, and that plan is going to succeed in further empowering Trump. This is going to be the Democrats' worst nightmare.
Oh, wait, Senator, is that
But this is what they're.
So Russ Vought is going to be the Democrats' worst nightmare, according to Mike Lee, because he's been prepping to do this his whole life. Now, remember, we've already mentioned this, but this whole shutdown comes because the Democrats were asking for health care for illegal immigrants. After this whole debacle, right, in the shutdown, Hakeem Jeffries yesterday was on with Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper called him out without calling him out.
Donald Trump blessed it as well.
So let me ask you about a provision that the Republicans are talking about quite a bit. I know you want to talk about, and Democrats want to talk about, extending the Obamacare subsidies, which expire at the end of 2025. But they talk about the provisions, and it's right here, subtitle E, and this has to do with the repeal of healthcare subtitle changes, and specifically what it is. How they characterize it is you want to give health insurance to undocumented immigrants. I understand that's not really an accurate depiction, but what it does do is...
It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Oh,
but
it's a lie.
What you support does bring back funding for emergency Medicaid to hospitals, some of which does pay for undocumented immigrants and people who don't have health insurance. And also there is this provision, and it's not about undocumented immigrants, it's about people with asylum seekers and people with temporary protected status, et cetera, but about their ability to get Medicaid. So they're non-citizens, they're not undocumented, they're not illegal. Why even include that in a bill, knowing that they're going to seize right upon that and use that to message? I understand that.
So he's basically, as you could hear there, he's like, okay, so you're not trying to explicitly give insurance to illegals, but you're funding all of the things that does give insurance to illegals, right? Scott Bessent described this. He says, the Democrats have kind of painted themselves into this like political box. And I know the vast majority of Americans don't pay close attention to this, but how did they get in this box? Because according to the Republicans, and what they're saying is in fact true, is the CR that they're trying to push is identical to the CR from a couple months ago when we avoided the last government shutdown that Chuck Schumer proposed. And all of a sudden now he doesn't want to do it. Why is that? Scott Bessent was on MSNBC, and he shares his reasons why he thinks Chuck Schumer is shutting the government down this time.
Let's just step back for a minute and look how we got here. Chuck Schumer did the right thing in the spring and led the Senate to a clean CR. What we've got here is the House they have passed a clean CR. The Republicans have the votes in the Senate, and he will not allow his members to come across. And what's changed since then is it's his poll numbers. So the president, Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, they're not negotiating with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. They're negotiating with Representative Ocasio-Cortez because she's nipping at his heels, and the American people are being held hostage by Chuck Schumer's poll numbers. And we're starting to see some of the very few moderate members left in the Democratic Party in the Senate drift toward wanting a solution. Chuck Schumer's blocking it. When I look at Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, straight out of Brooklyn, makes me glad that I left New York in 2020. And your question about the shutdown, this is a choice that Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have made. And if they want to shut the government down, then there are ramifications.
So AOC has always been a threat to Chuck Schumer because she's from New York. She's younger. As Chuck Schumer gets older, he's only got, 1, 2, 3, 4 cycles left in him. Sounds crazy, but this is like the 21st century where our representatives serve for 30 to 40 years in a pop. So I don't know how many cycles he has left, 2, 3, I don't know. But Chuck Schumer's got a little bit of time left, but not a lot. Ocasio-Cortez clearly has the ability to potentially take over and become the senator from New York at any time, right? She can make multiple runs at it and push Chuck Schumer up against the wall. Here's the other thing. Chuck Schumer, while he's a radical leftist, right, as we call them all, he's not that radical, right? He's a Wall Street Democrat. He's all about contracts. You go listen to his old videos. He was against illegal immigration. He was against immigration fraud. He was against all these different things. But what's happened is the Democrat Party, in my opinion, as they have learned to perfect the election steal, they no longer have to work towards satisfying the larger constituency. They no longer need 50% plus one. What they need is 15% plus money. right? So where do you get your 15%? Where do you get the support that will make it look like you have chatter online, that will make it look like somebody showed up to vote for you and will open their pocketbook to donate? It's that 15%. In that 15% of radical leftists, there are people who, in my opinion, based on everything we've talked about on this show, have broken the law in order to generate funds in order to donate to these Democrats. So you have criminals who've committed all sorts of fraudulent behavior in order to funnel money from places like USAID into nonprofits and back into campaign contributions. This is what Tim Burkhart has explained to us. In that environment where you're pitching towards the 15% of your most radical active base, you know you don't need 50% plus one because you can steal the election. All you need is enough money to get there. If you can make the story believable, then the election seems reasonable, right? That's the idea. That's what happened in 2020. With all the rioting in 2020, there was a narrative that Americans are dissatisfied with Trump, that Trump is chaos, that Trump is all this bad law and order, that he can't handle China, blah, blah, blah. And that narrative created a story that was believable enough that the actual election fraud, the outcome was believable too. So that's why Chuck Schumer is so threatened by AOC. She can play to that 15% base. She's radical, aligns ideologically, and she's kind of the heir apparent. So now that the Democrats, essentially their one and only functioning talking point is fight Trump. Anything Trump's for, we're against. Even if it's things we've been traditionally for, right? We got to be against it. AOC can play that line better because she is not actually responsible to Wall Street donors yet, whereas Chuck Schumer is, right? So America First is good generally for what's going on in Wall Street. I mean, I'm sure Chuck donors aren't too upset as Wall Street hits high after high and he comes right out of New York, right? So that's the threat. That's what they're doing. We are being held hostage right now by 15% of the radical Democrats, along with their donors who likely have been making donations out of tax funds. And that political pressure against Chuck Schumer is what's got our government closed, which, you know, might not be the worst thing because, hey, at least Donald Trump and the Republicans have stood firm and decided not to fund illegal immigrants, which is exactly what they asked for.
Chuck Schumer was in the Oval Office with me, 48 hours ago. We were there. The president, as a strong leader, he brought all of us in, all four leaders, Thune and Schumer and myself and Hakeem Jeffries. And the president said, make your case. What is it you want? And Chuck Schumer repeated in that meeting what he put on paper. The counter proposal that he filed, everyone can go read it for themselves, would add $1.5 trillion in new spending on a 7-week stopgap measure. We're not doing that. He wants to give health care to illegal aliens again. We're not doing that. He wanted to claw back $50 billion that our Republican Big Beautiful Bill put in to prop up rural hospitals. Now, people say, why would he do that? I thought he was for health care. Well, a lot of those rural hospitals, most of them are in red states. So I don't know. I don't know what his motivation is, but we can't do it. Chuck Schumer was in the...
So he definitely wanted to create a situation where illegals were going to get healthcare. This is counterproductive to everything. And Donald Trump has a plan here. He's got layoffs coming, right? Oh, give me a shutdown. Make my dream come true. I think Donald Trump made it easy for him. Like, well, just vote on what you voted for before. Anything outside of that, I get my way. I get to start firing people.
There was an OMB memo going around suggesting that there might be firings during the shutdown. Do you think that will happen if the shutdown goes for a little bit of time, sir?
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault. And it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place. And I will probably do that.
Maybe that doesn't make you a little bit when you hear him talking about cutting the federal workforce. Oh, am I a little garbled again? Okay, am I better now? A little bit better. Okay, that brings me to my second ad read for the morning. It's Patriot Mobile. At 1776 Live, we super refer Patriot Mobile, one of the best mobile companies out there. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, and they're putting their money where their values are. Every call you make helps fund causes that protect faith, family, freedom, and our Constitution. Right now, Patriot Mobile is giving you an entire month of service absolutely free when you switch at promo code COURAGE25. That's right. Your first month is on them. You'll get reliable 4G and 5G coverage, affordable plans for you and your family, and 100% US-based customer support. And the best part, you know your dollars are supporting causes you believe in. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT today. patriotmobile.com, promo code COURAGE25 for 1 free month of service. I feel like my audio was a little bad during that. I have no idea what's going on. Okay, so did that help at all? That did help. That was horrible for that ad read. Man, sometimes I don't know, man. Technology. I'm just glad I'm streaming. Isn't it awesome? Everybody's just sitting here with us watching this. Okay, so this is Chuck Schumer, or excuse me, Speaker Johnson, talking about how the keys to the kingdom got handed to Donald Trump. What's he going to do with the keys to that kingdom? What are we going to be in for?
President Trump has said, he could use this as an opportunity to further cut government and turn some of those temporary furloughs into permanent job cuts. Speaker, can you assess what you're expecting in terms of the job cuts and how severe they could be?
Yes, the president and I have talked about this at great length. While a shutdown is very damaging for real American people who depend upon government services, it can provide an opportunity to downsize the scope and the scale of government, which is something that we've all always wanted to do. And so in a way, Chuck Schumer has now handed the keys to the kingdom to the executive branch under President Trump to do some things that we would not otherwise be able to do because we would never get Democrat votes for them. Now, Russ Vought is in charge, as you know, of the Office of Management and Budget, and it is his responsibility to look at all of this and make very difficult choices. He gets to decide now what services are essential, what programs and policies should be continued, and which would not be a priority for taxpayers. That is what is about to happen, and Chuck Schumer has allowed that. And so from his political perspective, it's a pretty massive backfire. And there's a real opportunity for government to work more efficiently and effectively for the people if those decisions are made.
Well, I get a little bit nervous anytime they're so consistent in saying things like, it's a political backfire, because I'm like, I always have to be suspicious that Republicans could potentially be projecting too. Now, this representative, who I apologize, can't remember your name, you should be on TV more and I'd remember it. This representative is talking about how they're not going to be using a hatchet, but a scalpel to make these cuts.
I haven't. And Russ was very clear with us on our call a couple of hours ago that they're being very precise and very focused in refining those plans so that whatever they do is done in a very targeted way to fundamentally shrink the size and scope of government. It'll be with a scalpel, not with a hatchet.
There are some 95,000 federal civil employees in your home state of Florida, more than 5,000 in your district. What's your message to them?
Well, my message to them is I cannot believe that Democrats are willing to have them not be paid so that they can give free health care to illegal immigrants, because that's what's happening. I'm also amazed that Democrats say they care about health care, but now they've cut off WIC for women and children who are in need in my district. And I'm also angry that my constituents in Holly Hill, who I just met with a little while ago, said they can't sell their houses because now the people buying can't buy flood insurance. These are terrible things that are going on, and I can't believe Democrats are doing it.
So, we're going to be taking a scalpel to fundamentally change the scope of government. I don't feel like that's what you do with a scalpel. I feel like maybe you do need a hatchet. Like, I want to chop off the entire Department of Education, and I wouldn't mind getting rid of like the entire DOT. Although the DOT is really NASA, right? Do you realize that? Do you realize that's really what's going on there? It's like space travel, NASA, Department of Transportation. Yeah. That's why Sean Duffy is the Secretary of NASA and the DOT. So Steve Bannon's got good warm and fuzzies about this shutdown. I gotta tell you, it's not like we get shutdowns every other week or anything, but I just don't see the downside. I live in the West. I guess federal workers aren't everywhere, and the ones that I do know are working. I don't know. It just seems like such a, they'll close down the national parks and be like, oh, isn't this horrible? Maybe. How is it possible? Is it possible for Donald Trump never to ask for them to refund the government and be able to put the government on a budget that could be paid for out of tariff revenue and other revenue that the federal government generates, fees, et cetera, et cetera? Is it possible? Like, is it within the realm of possibility? I don't know. I don't know that you're going to get there with a scalpel. This is Steve Bannon on his take on it.
It's a Schumer shutdown.
But there's a lot to do, and this can be to our advantage. I'm a huge believer in these government shutdowns because, number one, you can do lots of reconstruction. Number two, it's been a winner for us in 13, and it was a winner for us in 18. By the way, we had a huge win in the midterms in 14, and we picked up 14 total seats in the House in the stolen election in 2020, and I think a net 12, which is extraordinary given they stole the presidency from President Trump. It's a Schumer.
So, you know, I mean, he's like, we got some chance at getting this done. Okay. On to a little bit of a different topic, but very related. So we played the interview with Peter Ticklin, one of my attorneys, who was talking about at the Department of Justice, Todd Blanche has been holding up J6 settlement. He's been holding up some pardons that need to be signed for different individuals. He's been holding up a whole bunch of Trump's kind of MAGA agenda and promises. And Peter Ticklin didn't really know why. He just said it's happening. He kind of ascribed it to the fact that Todd Blanche used to be a Democrat up until like January 2024 when he became a Republican when he was representing Trump. So who knows how deep that conversion is, or if it was a conversion of convenience since you're working for the former Republican president. But Patrick Byrne, someone that I admire quite a bit and follows me on X, by the way, Patrick Byrne gave a little bit more color, a little bit more explanation to exactly what it is that Todd Blanche is doing and why it is that so many of Trump's agenda have kind of felt really slow walked, especially when it comes down to the DOJ. So Patrick Byrne at this point in the interview, because it was a longer interview and I'm just going to play a couple minutes of it. But at this point in the interview, he explained how in the Eastern District of Virginia, there was almost certainly some good attorneys that drafted up this indictment, had it all ready to go, but the United States attorney wouldn't sign it, wouldn't push it forward. So Trump had to fire him, got personally involved, appointed this insurance agent who's Attorney Halligan to the Western District of Virginia, or the Eastern District of Virginia, excuse me. And within 3 days, she was able to secure the indictment from a grand jury. So that's good. Stops the clock on, basically now you can look at everything Comey's done because you've stopped the clock with this one thing. And so that's good. But where's the other indictments? Why did Trump have to make such a scene? I didn't realize this, but Trump, when he tweeted out the thing about Pam Bondi, more of the same, nothing's happening, nobody's been arrested. I guess he deleted that like 3 hours later and put out the tweet where he was a little bit more complimentary of Pam Bondi. I didn't realize Trump had deleted that tweet, so clearly it caused some riff in the White House. But why? Patrick Byrne is going to answer the question of why. Throughout this show, through all the episodes leading up till now, we've laid out the case that we're fighting a civilizational battle, right? And it's a constant thing. This is a 2,000 plus year old battle between freedom and slavery, liberty and subjugation, right? This is a long thing. This is not new by any means. And it does us a disservice to think like that this has suddenly popped up, that, the United States was completely unified and the government never lied to us in 1995 and it's been all downhill from then. It didn't start in 1995, right? This has been going on for a long time. But we are at a point right now where the energy has shifted. You took the left, the progressives, the people who've been in charge since the end of World War II, took it too far. You got transgenders giving speeches in the military. You don't know what's in your pants if you're a boy or a girl. You've just disconnected from reality enough that it's like sometimes in the course of human events, it's okay for the peasants to tell the leaders, boop, you, right? I'm a boy. That's a girl. That's where we're at. So the people who pushed that agenda, right? The law firms, the people who were the knights of today, the law firms, the lawyers, the people who practiced lawfare against people who reject this delusional worldview, right? That simply want it to be attached to reality, at least as far as outcomes are concerned. And they think that they can outweight Trump. And when they come back into power, if we thought what they did to conservatives in the Obama and Biden regime was a lot, they've got completely different plans coming for people involved in Trump's administration and in supporting Trump.
Tell you what's happening and why it's happening. And I don't, it's really not my habit in life to go around bayoneting federal officials. It's things I've ended up doing. We both have done a lot. Here's what's going on. There's a very interesting post. You're right. On the September 20th, President Trump put up this scathing post, frankly, about Pam Bondi and what's going on. He took it down, I think just a few hours later, and then put another up that was more mollycoddling. But 2 days later, no, actually on that same day, he fired, as you said, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. 2 days later, put this woman in, Lindsay, Halligan? She's an insurance attorney. And 3 days later, you have an indictment. What that tells me is there was an indictment prepared. That indictment's prepared. It's been sitting there. It's been sitting there waiting for the U.S. Attorney of the Eastern District to sign. It's probably been sitting there for 9 months. It may have been sitting there for a couple of years. There are people in the DOJ who did their job and prepared indictments for what they saw overhead. And when Trump came in, they've just been waiting for Trump's appointments to sign off so the indictment goes forward. The DOJ has been sitting on that and would not let that go forward. And that's why when he fires the U.S. attorney and just puts in an insurance attorney, it doesn't take her. She could not have researched and investigated and done all of that in 72 hours. It was ready. It was ready to go. And the guy Trump fired was just refusing to sign it. That's a very educated guess, knowing nothing about this particular situation, but I know how some things like that work in the DOJ. So that's interesting. The indictment is spectacular, and it's a hook. It stops the shot clock on the statute of limitations. So that's what's going on now. Emerald, would you like to hear why that's going on? Why it's quite different than why that's going on. We all knew in the first Trump term there were a bunch of Marxists in there fighting him doing everything. A lot of deep state has actually been shoved out, and that's not the problem. The problem is even people who are in there and want to do their job, it might just be moderates or something, they're all getting a message. And this message is being spread across the bureaucracy. And
this is why this is a zero-sum game. When Bannon says there has to be a winner and a loser, okay? Some people involved in this fight do not recognize that we are in a civilizational struggle. And this is one of those moments that determines what the next 80 to 100 years looks like. Who's going to be in charge for the next regime? This is a fourth turning, right? We've been through this a couple times in this country, and every time our country is reborn, we keep a little bit of the old, but we add a whole bunch of new. Our country looked completely different prior to 1776 to after, looked totally different prior to 1871 to after, looked totally different prior to World War I and the Great Depression collectively and after, right? Totally different. The way government runs, the words we use in court, the commercial systems we use, everything changes. The only thing that doesn't change or changes slowly is the Constitution of the people, right? Our Constitution. We acquiesce to these changes. So here we are in the middle of a change, and you have people in power, these law firms that have caused untold amounts of obstruction for any type of common sense agenda, have spread the word across the bureaucracy.
So there are sources on this across Washington, including one who's a staffer within the Senate on a Democrat Senate committee. And this is the information I'm getting from multiple places, that the firms like Perkins Coie and WilmerHale and all these old line DC firms who Trump snipped their security clearances, and that's really screwed up their businesses. What they're doing is they're spending their time writing up hundreds of indictments on all of us. We're going to be charged with treason and hung.
Now you might think, well, hundreds of indictments, these are private law firms like Perkins Coie and, these different Paul Weiss. Why are they writing indictments? Guys, remember just a couple days ago, we talked about how Chris Wray was an owner and was a partner in King and Spalding and then went back to it. Like King and Spalding is one of these law firms. It's at these law firms that we get the rotation of U.S. attorneys in and out from these law firms. They're just writing up indictments that they can hand or walk with them into their new appointments in a new Democrat presidency, right? So this is probably pretty normal.
We're going to be charged with hanged, I guess. Treason. We're going to be charged with treason and be hanged. And they're planning. That's their plan. If the Democrats get back in, that's what they are literally drafting indictments for anyone who cooperates on Trump. So this time I say it's different than the first term, because the first term they were just out and out Marxists. I don't believe Todd and Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi are Marxists in opposition to Trump in that sense. But you have a bunch I can't use the kind of word I want to use. So I'll say we have a lot of lily-livered people in government. Somebody who once brought me into some government affairs said, we're looking for people who are PhDs, but who've won a few bar fights, or at least been in a few bar fights. Patrick, and that's you. These people have never been, they're scared. They're scared. And they literally, I know some of them, and they're modest, nice people who want to serve their country. They're literally getting told that they're going to be hanged if the Democrats get back in, and then indictments are being written on them. So I think that's the reason you have Todd Blanche sitting on his hands. Pam Bondi is an absentee manager. I hear that she's basically spending most of her time in Florida. She flies up to make announcements, goes to the White House. Maybe she drops by the DOJ, and then she flies back. Todd Blanche, the number 2, is running the DOJ, and he's been putting the kibosh on everything. And I don't think it's evil. I think that he's one of the people who thinks these are Bolsheviks. This is a communist revolution we're facing. And I think these people are scared for their lives, which is why I think Donald Trump should move all this into the military, because those are guys who are not afraid to be in a bar fight.
Okay, so one of the things that I pay attention to when I'm listening to him there, and I think about all these people, okay, I believed, and still do, that the 2020 election was stolen. Obviously, it motivated some of my actions, which caused a lot of consequences in my life, right? But I've looked at it honestly. Like, if I was wrong, I wanted to be wrong. I would be the guy that would stand at their sentencing. I was wrong. I was beguiled by Trump, duped, fooled. Didn't happen. I wasn't fooled. The evidence was never disproved. I'm, been through it a million times with you guys. Some of these people that are serving in government, I don't know that they know. I don't know that they know that the Democrats had to steal 2020. I think they think it was a close election. I think they think that Kamala Harris almost won 2024. I don't think they realize the impact of the voting machines and the paper ballots, and that this isn't a close election, that you don't have the American people behind you, period. So what are they going to do, right? Come to the realization that 2026 is not looking so good for them. Not only do you not have the seats to win because of redistricting, but you kind of flubbed everything. Like, you're still trying to sell free healthcare for illegals. You're still trying to sell, transgender stuff. It's just not going to fly. What makes you think that, normally the minority comes into power during the midterms? Really? Every time? Even when you guys are idiots? I mean, like, genuinely idiots. What about funding? You're going to be able to fund your campaigns the same way you did before if you can't funnel it through, all these nonprofits and stuff, and it's being watched? Do you really think you can win? Or do you just kind of, counting on the pendulum? Or even more nefarious and worse, they're going to cheat worse. They're going to make it worse. They're going to make it to where we don't have an election, or where they just outright steal it. I mean, you do have to realize in 2020, that whole, middle of the night Biden hockey stick curve of votes, like, we the people let that happen. We just moved on with our lives, just collected our Social Security checks, called it good. I acquiesced and consented to it by continuing to live our lives the same way we did before. Okay. Will the Democrats come back into power? And if they do, they've already broken the seal on putting people who work inside the executive branch and are advisors to the president, aka Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, in prison. They've already indicted the former president. You don't think they'll do it again? You don't think they'll put his advisors in prison? You don't think they could put Todd Blanche in prison, right? They don't care about the law. You think the law matters. I know it doesn't matter. I know that for a fact. I've watched them violate the law in my case. I watched them violate constitutional amendments. I watched them violate what we would just consider decency, norms. There are no laws. There are only cops. There's only enforcers, right? If you haven't figured that out, hello. Okay. And if you want to see how bad this is, like, again, this narrative war has been going on for a long time. So we've talked about the ADL from time to time, and the ADL creates this extremism database. And the ADL traditionally has partnered up with the FBI to tell the FBI who the extremists and who the terrorists in America are. Kash Patel just terminated that special relationship with the ADL. The ADL, as early as just a few days ago, had Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA listed in their glossary of extremism, right? Anti-Defamation League deleted its glossary of extremism database on Tuesday after receiving backlash for including the late Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA. With over 1,000 entries written over many years, the ADL Glossary of Extremism has served as a high-level information on a wide range of topics for years. At the same time, an increasing number of entries in the glossary were outdated. The organization said, we saw a number of entries intentionally misrepresented and misused. Moreover, our experts have continued to develop more comprehensive resources and innovative ways to provide information about anti-Semitism, extremism, and hate. Okay, so what you're saying is you labeled them terrorists, you labeled them extremists, got them to where the FBI was involved with it, but now you're saying, oh, we made some mistakes and misrepresented what was really going on there. You don't get to make mistakes like that. We don't cry over spilt milk, but this isn't one of those things where you just go, oopsies. No. You violated constitutional protections. You spied on people. TPUSA was part of the Arctic Frost stuff. Why? It links back to this. It links back to the fact that the ADL, this third-party, trusted, long-time existing entity that determines who's a terrorist in our country, who's an extremist. It goes to that. It goes to nothing else. The statement continued, at ADL, we're always looking for how we can and should do things better. That's why we're moving to retire the glossary effectively immediately. This will allow ADL to explore new strategies and creative approaches to deliver our data and present our research more effectively. It will keep us focused on ensuring what we do best, fighting anti-Semitism and hate in the most impactful ways possible. You remember just a few days ago how people were complaining about how the FBI got rid of the report on right-wing extremism? Well, when you go back and look at that report, they don't include any left-wing extremists at all. None. Like mass shooters, they're not in the report at all. Not there. Steven Crowder did a really great piece on this where he goes through all these left-wing extremists that nobody doubts is left-wing, not even included in those reports. So they took the reports down because they were fraudulent. Right? ADL. Oh, hey, sorry, I made some mistakes, weren't really accurate. Turning Point, not an extremist organization. But we wanted them to be. Right? You can't trust any of this stuff. So, and this goes true, right? I sit on the fence when it comes to Israel. I like what Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist, says. He says, when it comes to other nations, right, I don't judge them based on their tax rates and the same things I judge my own nation on, my own country. What I judge them on is, do they act in their own best interest? If they believe, and I think that they're acting in their best interest, that's the logic. That's what you're going to do. I expect the United States of America to act in her own best interest as well, right? So when it comes to Israel and fighting wars, I don't have a dog in the fight. I think every nation should fight their own battles. Doesn't seem too complicated to me, but this situation with Israel and how it's fought its battle hasn't really been fairly assessed. And this point got made, of all places, on MSNBC, and he's kind of right.
2,200 American servicemen killed at Pearl Harbor. We go on to kill 3.5 million Japanese, including 100,000 in one night. 2,800 Americans in 9/11. We go on to kill 400,000 people in Afghanistan and Iraq. We weren't accused of genocide. You had, if Mexico had elected a jihadist cartel to run their country, and then they incurred into Texas, and on a per capita basis killed 35,000 people, or the population of the University of Texas, and on the way back took the freshman class at SMU hostage and hid them under tunnels, what would we do? It'd be the great Sonora radioactive parking lot. But Jews are not allowed, and Israel is not allowed to prosecute a war. And they are prosecuting a war more humanely than we have done. The ratio of combatants to civilians is of civilian death to combatant mortality is lower than it was in Mosul, lower than it was in Japan, lower than it was in Germany. So there's just a different standard for Jews in Israel when it comes to prosecuting a war. They're allowed to fight back to a truce, but unlike America or any other Western nation that has attacked this viciously, they're not allowed to win a war. It's a double standard.
I think Israel suffers from a problem that people suffer from generally, and their virtue gets weaponized against them. On one hand, you have a people who absolutely, never again, right? They never want to let the Holocaust situation happen again. But on the other hand, it's human psychology that the victim sometimes starts to identify with the oppressor. And I think a large portion of the Jewish population has become just that. They've become these progressive, radical liberals that support things that are not in their own interest. Like, for example, the Palestinian state and Hamas. Okay, it's like gays for Hamas. It doesn't make any sense. Israel gets that double standard, right? They can't do things the way they should do them. MAGA, not that I'm making other comparisons aside from this specific one also falls into that same camp. Our virtue gets weaponized against us. Don't you do lawfare? Don't weaponize government against James Comey. Don't do these things. It's like, you've been doing them all along. Do you not see how the Muslim nations and the Islamic nations prosecute their wars? I mean, you think what Israel's doing bad. You should see how they prosecute. War is war. It's ugly. You think America went to Iraq and it was just all cupcakes and ding-dongs? Oh, hell no. Right? Go talk to someone who served over there and actually saw some combat. It was horrible. Right? It sucked. We have to win. Israel, in that situation, in that war, though I might disagree with a bunch of stuff, they have to win. It's in their state's best interest, right? That's the whole thing. I learned this in prison. As a parent, when my kids fight, I don't usually care who threw the first punch. I don't usually care because I'll tell my kids are all different ages. So usually it's the young kid throws the first punch, older kid finishes it, right? And then I'm like, I have to punish both of them. And a lot of times the one who finished the fight gets punished more. That's not how the real world works. In the real world works, you're supposed to finish your fights. You're just not to throw the first punch. And that's why, because international politics mirrors our individual lives, right? You have to finish the fight. It does matter who throws the first punch. Okay. And there's no justification for it. It doesn't matter what words are said or what threats are made, right? Whoever throws the first punch. In prison, there's cameras mostly everywhere. And if you get in a fight on camera, it matters who throws the first punch. I saw one fight in prison where the person who started the fight underweighed the aggressor by probably 50 or 60 pounds. And when I say the aggressor, I'm saying because the guy who won the fight was wildly aggressive. Okay. The guy who started the fight, he didn't really start the fight verbally, but the guy who threw the first punch threw one single punch. And then the other guy got in, 100 punches, blood everywhere, absolute horrible mess. Okay. The guy who threw the first punch went to the hole, got the write-up, got the shot. The guy who finished the fight, nothing. That's how the real world works. We got to finish these fights. Donald Trump understands that. That's why he didn't extend the Iran matter, right? He got right at it. And he also understands we are in a civilizational struggle. And the enemies that we have right now don't wear uniforms. This comes from NBC News. At least 2 did in a UK car ramming and stabbing outside a UK synagogue, police say. London, 2 people were killed and 3 others were seriously injured on Thursday after a man rammed a car into a crowd at a synagogue in northern English city of Manchester. It came just as worshippers observed Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. So there was a terror attack on a Jewish synagogue in England. And guys, it's not the first time, right? There are people amongst this immigrant population that are waging an active jihad in the real world. They are here to destroy our way of life and to assimilate us into their culture. The good Christian way of seeing it, the good MAGA way, the good Jewish way of being compassionate, not wanting to become the thing you hate, the oppressor, oftentimes leads just to turn the other cheek one too many times, right? Donald Trump's clearly trying to take a huge bite at the apple here in the United States because the illegal immigration thing parlays into the Islamic struggle and they're combined up with Marxists, collectivists, right? In order to basically create a one world order. That is not an order that in the world I want to live in. And these people who are destroying our systems are all over the place. This is a small clip of a 17-minute press briefing that was given in Minnesota 2 days ago, yesterday or 2 days ago. Okay. It was a 17-minute long briefing. All 17 minutes of this briefing are stunning. Here is just a highlight. 50% of the illegal immigrants they surveyed in Minneapolis were committing fraud and other crimes. 50%.
Team. Since September 19th, officers from our Fraud Detection and National Security Directorate, working in teams, have conducted over 1,000 site visits across the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of this operation. What they found should shock all of America. Focusing on a list of over 1,000 target cases involving more than 900 individuals, our officers encountered blatant marriage fraud, visa overstays, people claiming to work at businesses that can't be found, forged documents, abuse of the H-1B visa system, abuse of the F-1 visas, and many other discrepancies. Over the course of the operation, our officers found indication of fraud, non-compliance, or public safety and national security concerns in nearly a little less than 50% of the cases in our team. Since September 9th,
50% of the cases interviewed. Now, there, I fixed it. 50% of the cases of people interviewed were committing some form of immigration fraud, financial fraud, welfare fraud. The list, he goes on to continue more things too, gun fraud, all kinds of stuff. Just shy of 50%. And this was just, a random audit. It's a huge deal. Before we get to the next thing, I want to read one more ad here by Pickaxe. Pickaxe. If you're done letting big tech decide what you see, you need to check out Pickaxe. This is the anti-algorithm, anti-censorship platform built for creators. No algorithmically manipulated feeds, no data harvesting, and zero tolerance for digital gatekeeping. Real voices are already building there. The Vigilant Fox, Children's Health Defense, Naomi Wolf, Ann Vanderstill, Shannon Joy, SGT Report, Red Pill 78, they're all on Pickaxe. You can write articles, auto-publish your Rumble videos, which are playable in the newsfeed as soon as you're able to blast out full email newsletters to your followers, monetize how you want, paywalls, affiliate links, revenue sharing, it's all built in. Free verification with a blue check, referral perks, total control. If you're serious about declaring your independence from big tech and experience true freedom of speech and freedom of reach, this is the platform. Check out pickaxe.com and set up your account today. Very cool. I'm going to have to check out Pickaxe. I got to be honest with you. I'm learning stuff in these ad reads. That's fun. Okay. Last one for the day. That was great. It's so nice when we can get through all of those. It makes me feel like I'm doing my job. Okay, so a huge percentage of the illegal immigrants that come to this country, 50% in Minneapolis, Minnesota area, were committing crimes. These are punishable crimes. Like, you go to prison for committing those crimes independently of the fact that you already crossed the border illegal. So this just goes to show, if your first act of coming into the country is an illegal act, what's to stop you from taking the second or third or fourth? What is a little immigration fraud when you've already crossed the border illegally? What is a sham marriage where you're just trying to get documentation? In that, he talked about that. They had a man who came, was married to a woman. They brought the woman in for an interview. They were like, oh no, we're married. It's legitimate. And then immediately they did a site visit, as in they went to the house and the woman was there. And guess what? The guy doesn't live there, nothing. And she admitted it's all immigration fraud, just like that. And they said, one of the things they said is, we've never followed up. Like, if they would have just come into the office normally and she would have said the magic words, our marriage is for love. All right, check box, legit marriage. The reality is it wasn't, right? And that probably happens a lot. There's another thing that happened this week in Orlando. The federal government came in and did an audit in Orlando. The chief financial officer of Florida, so I guess CFO of Florida, through FAFO Audits, just revealed $1 billion in fraudulent spending in 5 blue counties and sent them a threat. So they came in and they audited Orlando, Orange County, Tampa, Hillsborough, Jacksonville, Alachua, and Broward County. And they found $1 billion worth of fraud at the local county levels. I've mentioned this before. We've talked about like that one treasurer or assessor in the Southwest that like $37 million that she'd stolen from the county over a decade, right? This stuff is going on. And not only is there outright fraud, there's just big fat holes where money spills out onto the floor, right? Where it doesn't need to be spent.
And let me be clear, and this is probably more for the cameras and people listening to my voice right now. If you are a city or a county that is planning on putting a tax referendum raise on the ballot in November 26, expect a knock on our door from us. If you are a county or a city that raised their millage rate a couple of weeks ago and actually raised property taxes on people this year when people are hurting, you can expect a call from our office. We are going to show the people in your cities and your counties just how much excessive waste, fraud, and abuse that you have, and then you can make the argument to your constituents why you raised taxes when people were feeling.
So real simple there, nothing complicated. you've got all these cities and counties that have raised their taxes through various ways. Gas taxes, property taxes, mill rates is what he said there, affects property taxes in Florida, right? Sales taxes, all these different ways to raise revenue. He also in that same press conference talked about levies for things like fire departments and police stations and stuff like that. These are all things, of course we would vote on a levy for new schools and police stations and stuff. But the problem is, if you've got $1 billion floating around in the budget, why are you asking me for an extra $15 million for a police station? Right? $1 billion floating around in those couple counties. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Some combination of the three, okay? Why are you asking the United States federal government to print more money? Why are we increasing our budget every year when you're spilling out billions of dollars? That's just happening in a couple counties in Florida. Imagine what all the counties in Florida would show. Imagine if you threw Georgia into the study, Alabama, Mississippi. I mean, shoot, we might have a revolution starting in the Southeast, right? Oh, all we got to do is go check our budgets. We're looking under the couch cushions for missing billions. We could solve probably most of our problems if we just, looked under couch cushions and, followed the rules the way they were written. This situation in Iowa with this school superintendent has totally grown legs. I find this story just the most fascinating thing. Here is an industry where normally you wouldn't expect anybody to even apply if they're illegal, right? Here you have a guy who's claiming to have a PhD and all these things. And apparently all along the way, nobody's ever thought to, fact check them, see what's going on. So this is Elizabeth Vargas reports, and she summarizes this whole thing, which again, this is like the story of the month to me. Some of these other stories, the shutdown, the cuts, they'll develop. Hopefully they go somewhere. I'd love to see something break through with Todd Blanche, but this right here, this is the kind of thing where we look at what's happening at the national level and these big national intrigue stories, and they do connect to us. I don't try to cover stories that don't somehow affect us, whether it's culturally or in the zeitgeist, but this right here, your kids right now today might be getting on a bus to go learn from somebody that is an illegal and is a complete fraud in pretty much every aspect of their lives.
Just what is going on with the Des Moines public school system? For starters, the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division is looking into alleged race-based discrimination in hiring for Des Moines public schools, which it says violates federal law. But really, that news is just the cherry on top. The district of 30,000 students is already swept up in uncertainty surrounding its now former school superintendent. Ian Roberts stepped down earlier today after he was arrested by ICE on Friday. Roberts is a native of Guyana and a former Olympic athlete who has served Des Moines Public Schools since 2023. A noon deadline came and went for Roberts to confirm his citizenship to the school board. The story is fast becoming a legal nightmare for Roberts and a PR nightmare for the people who hired him. News Nation's investigative correspondent Rich McHugh has been digging into Roberts' record and found that some things are not adding up.
Right? Hi. How are you? It's unusual for ICE agents to arrest Midwestern school superintendents, and it's even more unusual for those superintendents to be found in possession of a loaded handgun, a fixed-blade hunting knife, and thousands of dollars in cash. But the case of Ian Roberts is anything but usual.
It's complex, it's difficult, and there are a lot of what I would call a myriad of issues that are involved.
When the news broke,
but are there really a myriad of issues involved? Is it really that big a deal, or is it just one issue? We have a liar and a criminal. I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
That ICE arrested Roberts initially, Des Moines School Board Chair Jackie Norris called for radical empathy.
Are you still calling for radical empathy, and is the board taking any responsibility for his hiring?
There was nothing in the information that was given to us.
There it is. Radical empathy. What did I just say about Israel and the Jews? What did I just say about MAGA and Christians? I looped us all in together and I said they weaponize our virtue against us. In the face of fraud, in the face of lawfare, in the face of warfare, in the face of suicide bombers, in the face of cultural devastation, we want to turn the other cheek. We want to have radical inclusive thoughts. We don't want to judge anybody for their journey. I'm pretty sure that you'd judge me if I took the same journey. Okay, pretty sure. I mean, you can't even let an American industrialist become an American success story without criticizing him. But then you got a guy like this who immigrates from Guyana, lies about everything and commits crime after crime. And instead you want us to radically forgive.
To allude to any question about his citizenship.
One question raises another, and straight answers are in short supply. Where was Roberts born? When a reporter asked him last year, he dodged the question.
Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Sure. Yeah. So both parents are from Guyana, South America. So I spent most of my formative years between Guyana and Brooklyn, New York.
ICE says he entered the U.S. on a student visa in 1999 and received a removal order in May 2024. Athletic competition records cite his birth date as December 18th, 1973. But court records and his 2017 marriage certificate list December 18th, 1970 as his birth date. His voter registration.
You know, I have this inside joke with my wife where I always say she's older than she is. So when she turns 40, I'm like, honey, you're 43. When she turned 32, honey, you're 37, right? It's an inside joke. We've been doing it for 20 plus years now. So, but you know, I know when her birthday is. I know when she was born. And I can't imagine filling out any type of application, whether it was for a credit card loan or a marriage certificate, where I would, you know, miss my birthday by 3 years.
Registration in Maryland says 1970. Roberts' academic record even more confusing. His LinkedIn, an impressive number of schools, a bachelor from Coppin State University, master's degree, St. John's, Morgan State University. For years, he went by doctor. St. John's confirmed he got a master's, but not a doctorate degree. His official bio says he completed programs at Morgan State. But Morgan State tells us no. Quote, Ian Roberts did not receive any degree or certificate from Morgan State University. Roberts left his last position at Mill Creek High Township in Pennsylvania for the job here. In a note, Mill Creek Township says he passed all clearances, including an FBI background check. But in 2020, at the time of his hiring in Mill Creek, the school board there raised questions about his background, according to minutes of their board meetings we obtained. Dr. Roberts lacked the educational certificate from his educational facilities that he obtained his doctorate.
You referred to him as Dr. Roberts. Can you tell us which institution he received his doctorate from?
Yes, it was, I know it, the International School, Trident International, right?
Trident International University, an online university. As many in the community rally around his case in solidarity, some parents with kids in the district have had enough.
Even if you take, was he here legally or not, when he was stopped and then he took off and he fled, and then they found a loaded gun, a fixed blade knife, and $3,000 in cash in his car, that enough is, I'm done.
That mom, Jen Cronin, says instead of radical empathy from the school board, she wants to see radical transparency and accountability. Ian Roberts, his attorney, says he's working to have his deportation order stayed and wants to reopen his immigration case. Elizabeth?
Is he still there, Rich? Where is he tonight?
It's unclear. We believe he is in a jail here in Des Moines, but even his attorney alluded to the fact that it's possible he is not.
Okay. And super quick, we mentioned he was an Olympic athlete. Which country did he compete for?
Guyana, South American country of Guyana.
All right. So that would seem to clear up at least when he wouldn't answer where he was born. This is the strangest story, Rich. Keep on it and let us know.
And if there's anything that I know about life, is it's not even the strangest story that's out there. That's the crazy part. Now, there's a couple things on there. I always kind of think this, right? Like normies, and who's normal, right? At this point, like he's talking about, well, he's carrying a knife and a gun. Now, I can understand carrying a gun and I can understand carrying a knife. In fact, I carry a fixed blade knife with me all the time, right? Why do I do that? Because I've been to prison. And I can't imagine walking around unarmed after a year of that. Anyways, I find if I got pulled over, they'd find a fixed blade knife on me too. But I have a reason. So I'm scared of all of you weirdos. I live in Seattle. They got Antifa and John Brown Gun Club everywhere you go. So this civilizational battle plays out on the internet, clearly. It plays out in the Gulf of America with drug boats because drugs are destroying our civilization. It plays out in the Middle East where we're fighting a ideology that is antithetical to the American way of life. But we have a domestic problem. We have cities with higher crime rates than some of the notorious third world crime, quote unquote, hellholes around, right? When DC and Chicago and Memphis, Tennessee have higher murder rates than Honduras, it starts to make you really wonder, are the fruits of what America's doing really that good, right? Now, Donald Trump, in a great experiment, cleaned up crime in the District of Columbia in a matter of weeks. Murders are down to essentially zero. I think the whole time Trump's had troops out there and federal officials patrolling the streets, I think we've had one murder in a month or two. That's like unheard of. And it's real when he says you can go walk around the streets of DC. They arrested thousands of people, like all the hooligans. They're all sitting in the DC jail right now. Very familiar with the place. Some of them are probably sitting in a mild cell. Okay. So they're all not on the streets doing bad things. So now the federal government has moved into Memphis. Now, Memphis, most people don't know. Let's see. All right, you can hear me again? All right, so Memphis had the highest murder rate in the country. It's one of the worst spots. My audio is a little funny, and I know it's because I've got this video on here, so I am going to go ahead and play this video. Yesterday, after Hegseth and Trump did their speech it wasn't yesterday, it was 2 days ago, their speech, then they headed out to Memphis. So we have Hegseth, Stephen Miller, Pam Bondi are all in Memphis, and they're kicking off this, I don't even know what operation they're calling it, whatever operation is, where they're sending full federal support to Memphis to clean up Memphis. I imagine, now this is a bigger area than what they did in DC, right? Memphis is going to cover more square miles. But what they're doing here is substantial. If you can clean up Memphis in a short amount of time, this is the blueprint to clean up all American cities. And it comes down to, which we're going to play here in a second, it comes down to results. If the police can't get it done, someone's got to get it done. And I always remember there's an episode we did a while back called My Gang's Bigger Than Your Gang, with the premise of the idea that, we're all pirates, and essentially you have gangs. You have the gang of the United States of America, the gang of Britain, the gang of Italy, the gang of Iran, right? These are all basically like organized crime syndicates. They just get the patina of government because they're not, their stated intention isn't to do bad things like a cartel or something. But the idea of my gang's bigger than your gang. This became extremely sensitive to me through my time in prison because while I wasn't in a gang, I was in a gang. I was one of the whites, right? And I had some kind of inherent protection from the whites. But everything was geared up where you had segregation, you were pitched against the different races, and then more than anything, you were pitched against the guards, right? And so their gang was bigger than our gang. Even in prison, right? We could run the yard and we could take care of things internally, but the prison gang, the actual guards, had better tools, better equipment, and more will to finish it, right? To finish the fight than prisoners did. Their gang was bigger than our gang. Not that I want to loop myself in with the prison gangs, but that's the point here. So when we're talking about the streets, our gang is bigger than your gang. Here is Stephen Miller, and he gave a rousing speech.
Memphis Police Department, to the officers that I see sitting in front of me, we are about to provide you with a level of support you cannot even imagine. This isn't just a task force. This is a all of government unlimited support operation. ATF, DEA, FBI, ICE, Department of War, every resource we have. And they're not going to be sitting behind a desk at a keyboard. We are sending in real cops with guns and badges to go out with you on the street every single night making arrests. These are people who have taken down drug cartels, kingpins, the worst criminal offenders in the United States, standing with you shoulder to shoulder to shoulder. All we ask from you is to show up at roll call every single night with your brothers and sisters in the federal government and to go out and get the criminals off the street. And if you do that, I pledge to you, we will liberate this city from the criminal element that has plagued it for generations. This is not just a strategy shift. This is an attitude shift. We are not going to live in an environment anywhere where there is a street that belongs to a criminal, where there is a neighborhood that belongs to a gang, where there is any physical space anywhere that belongs to anyone other than the law-abiding citizens and families of Memphis. The idea that there is a square inch of block in this city where a citizen doesn't feel safe is unacceptable. This is Memphis. This is the United States of America. And all that bullshit is done. It's over. It's finished.
This is the pendulum swinging, right? This is the pendulum swinging. All this time that has been going on, there are spots in the United States where Americans do not feel safe. That is failure of government. The first and foremost thing that we create government to do is to protect us from ourselves, aka keep our streets and neighborhoods safe, right? The law enforcement policing function is one of the very first things that a civilized group of people will create, right? How do you enforce the contracts and how do you enforce customs and norms, right? They do that through law enforcement, through the police force. The idea that a street in America does not belong to Americans and belongs to some gang member that's not willing to share it with other Americans lawfully and legally, right? It's unacceptable. Stephen Miller has done a wonderful job of reframing this problem, because the excuses we get for why this happens come from people like this. This is the police chief in Portland, who is another city that Donald Trump is sending federal troops to, and he's describing the situation in Portland. This is insanity. So listen to what he says, how it's, oh, this problem is so blown up online. Okay, I can agree with you there, but wait till you hear what I have to say on the other end of this.
Is there a myth or a misconception since this news broke that you're like, oh, I just wish people understood this?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, and it's been highlighted so many times so well, but I just want to emphasize, this is one city block. City of Portland is about 145 square miles. This is one city block. And even the events that are happening down there do not rise to the level of attention that they are receiving. We are seeing this true for our society in whole. I'm not going to try and editorialize too much, but these, 30-second, 20-second, 15-second clips that are brought in from months ago or maybe even years ago. We've seen Portland portrayed through the events of the lens of 20 and 21. And what's actually happening in the response that we're seeing both from Portlanders and from the Portland Police Bureau is not in line with that national narrative. And it is frustrating, but we're going to continue to stay the course. I said this on Saturday. The actions of the federal government and others doesn't change the resolve that the Portland Police Bureau has to continue to provide the highest level of safety and security and service to Portlanders.
Okay, Mr. Police Chief. So you have 165 miles to patrol. And basically what you're saying is, for the most part, we do a good job. 164.9 miles, doing A-okay. But we got this one city block that's a problem. Then fix it! If it's just a block, go fix it. I would have felt better if you said 165 square miles are falling apart and I can't do anything to stop it. We're having a hard time responding to all the 911 calls. I'd have rather you said that. But instead you're like, nah, we don't really have a problem. I mean, most of the problem's isolated to that one block. I mean, that one block isn't really Portland anymore. It's actually Antifa-stan. And that one block happens to be around a federal building that they spray paint and firebomb and target. I got to tell you, when I was interviewed by the FBI at a Starbucks in Port Orchard, Washington, where they served me with a warrant and took my phone, right? When I sat there with those two FBI agents deputized to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, one of them was coming out of the Vancouver area. And he, the previous summer, because this was 2021, and in 2020, he had been task force to the Federal Building Services, or FSB or FBC, the Federal Building Services, whatever, and to go down to the Multnomah courthouse and defend it for 60 nights straight. Now, the protests went on longer than that. Riots went on longer than that, but he was there for 60 nights straight. And when he watched the video of me at the United States Capitol, he was like, this is, and he referenced specifically, this is like nothing like what we were seeing in Portland. So, it's just a city block, but, they're actually doing things that were way more crazy than what I participated in on January 6th, and I got a 7-year prison sentence. So, Mr. Police Chief, I understand that, it's not as bad as they say, because you're looking at 165 square miles and you've just got one little city block that's a problem. Then mobilize your guys down to the city block. Put 75 officers on that city block tonight. See if you can stop the crime. But you're not. That's the problem. That's the problem. We pay you probably a 6-figure plus salary to keep us safe. And there's a city block in your city where your residents don't feel safe. Go park a cop car on the corner and leave it there all night long. Okay. Not that hard to figure out. It's got to be done. Joe Scarborough was asking Representative Lisa McClain about how she feels about federal troops on our streets. And here's the thing. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I'm a peasant. I don't want the military walking around my farm, walking around my neighborhood. I don't want that. But at the same time, I don't want the cartel walking around my farm. And even more than that, I definitely don't want the cartel educating my children, because if the guy that's the superintendent of public schools in Iowa, like one of the whitest states in the country, if this great DEI hire, oh, look, Iowa, oh, it's 98% white, but we got a black superintendent of schools, happens to be an illegal immigrant, happens to not know what year he was born, happens to have committed multiple layers of immigration fraud, happens to have a final order of deportation, happens to have gun charges, happens to not be able to produce his educational certificates, right? But, oh no, he's running the... You can't take care of the crime. The cartel is running my neighborhood. And apparently there's the potential that the cartel could be running my school too. My kids' school too. Do you not get it? So when the question is asked, do you support federal troops? The answer is no. But then when the question is asked, do you want to get rid of all of the problems that come along with illegal immigration? We go on and on. The carnage. You introduce drugs in a community. You're going to have sex crimes. You're going to have theft. You're going to have fraud. You're going to have all kinds of stuff that all wrap around those drugs. Okay. It's absolute carnage. So Trump has reframed it like, listen, we got to keep our city states. And if that city's safe, and if that means utilizing the military, that's what the military's there to do. So this is Representative McClain answering Joe Scarborough's question about how she feels about the military on the street.
When the law forbids the military from being used for crime prevention, do you have any concern, or do any members of the Republican Party that you've spoke to have any concern about the president talking about using the military to fight the enemy within and to use cities as a training ground?
Yeah, what is so unfortunate is that, again, we're even to have this conversation.
Yeah, but I understand that. It is unfortunate. No, you've already answered.
Then we can just have a monologue. Go ahead.
Yeah, you were the one who's had the monologue. I'll be very glad if you want to count
asked me the question.
We've talked. I asked you the question, you answered it, and I'm just asking you a simple question.
Yeah.
And
I'll give you an answer.
Do you, yes or no, do you support the military being used for crime control in American cities? Or should cops do it?
Right. It would be wonderful if cops could do it. Cops absolutely should do it. And if you'll let me continue, the judges should do it. You know who's getting sick and tired of this is the American people. Why don't you ask a victim's father who their daughter just got murdered, who has been let out 35 times, committed 35 felonies. The problem is when the local law enforcement doesn't have the power because of the radical liberal judges that let these criminals out on a daily basis, right? They commit a crime and then they get let out. That's the problem. Right. And that's what we need to fix. So do I like it? No, I don't. But at some point in time, people have to follow the law and there has to be consequences, because I care way more about the American people and I care way more about the victims than I do the criminals.
So that's what it boils down to. You got to keep us safe. If it would be great if the cops do it. Hey, police chief in Portland, do you know how you could prevent federal troops from walking around your city? Clean up that one city block that's a problem. The one city block that makes the narrative true that Portland's out of control, fix it. Oh, I can't fix it because the judges. Okay, then you need federal help. We need to take it out of the local level and take it to the federal level. What do you want to do? The only guy that's got any MAGA gumption is the president. Apparently you can't elect a city council with MAGA gumption. You know, people that want America to be great. Can't do it. It's impossible, right? Apparently. So if the police can't do it, then the feds have to do it. I don't like it. Nobody likes this. But we're backed into a corner.
I agree. I do too. And of course, we talk about that on the show, and we have for years now. I agree with you. We need judges that Don't let people out on cashless bail. We need cops to know that politicians in cities have their back. We need people to be able to walk the streets of American cities and know they're going to be safe. So back to the question.
And that's not happening now.
do you support the military engaging in crime control in American cities?
What I care about is the safety. And what I think the focus should be is, why aren't you interviewing these judges, these Democratic mayors that are allowing this to happen, so we don't have to get to this point? Right? And what do they say? And what do they say to the father?
Well,
what do they say to the victim's
time and time again? I went after time and time again the mayor of Chicago, saying, why don't you ask for 5,000 more cops on the street? Why don't you ask for more support? Don't cops make streets safer? And I finally got him to answer, well, yeah, the same thing with the judges, but judges don't come on TV shows, but it's the same thing with the judges. Again, you and I agree on crime. You and I agree that Americans, our children, need to be able to walk around American cities. They need to be able to take the subway. They need to be able to take the metro, and they need to be safe. I'm talking, though, about the American law, the Posse Comitatus Act, very clear, that says the military should never be used for crime control. I'm curious if you support that, or if you think we should leave this in the hands of cops and not have the military go into our cities.
I would love to leave it in the hands of the law enforcement agents, the crime. I would actually love to leave it in the hands of the judges and the prosecutors to follow the law and to do. We've got to get rid of these soft on crime policies. I think we both agree on that.
Right. Agree on that.
Yes. Do I like the fact that we have to bring military force in? Absolutely not. I would much prefer to handle it at the local level, like the law says. That is where I stand. All I'm trying to tell you is the difference between when we bring the National Guard in. Look at D.C. I'm trying to compare and contrast. It works. You can't deny that.
So,
it works. The facts speak for themselves.
Not only do I not deny that, I've said on this show again, the president had the right to do that. And if you talk to people that live in Washington, D.C., you find that actually it is the people that are most affected by crime that want more law enforcement officers on the street. But obviously, Washington, D.C. is not Chicago, is not Memphis, is not. And I guess what I'm talking about here is you have the National Guard. And then you have.
So what's crazy about this is, if you go back just a couple weeks ago to when they were launching the operation in D.C., these same Democrats like Joe Scarborough and all the sycophants out there were like, you can't do this. It's not going to work. And then it did. And that's what she just said. D.C. safe. It hasn't been safe for decades. Decades. And now people are out enjoying random parts of town, going to bodegas that they would have ventured into those neighborhoods. It works. So what happens when Memphis gets cleaned up and goes from the #1 murder city down to the lowest on the list? What happens? Are we going to get rid of this Posse Comitatus thing and just go, maybe the military can do it better? I mean, we are just trading one police force for another, right? It's just changing the chain of command, because presumably the military will get the job done, whereas the cops and judges can't get the job done because their hands have been tied by politicians, presumably, right? But now you have set the precedent where you've got troops walking around Memphis looking for drug dealers and stuff, and they're not there defending us from Al-Qaeda, right? But again, it goes to this bigger theme. Has the United States been invaded? Yeah, 20 million plus people, maybe as high as 40 more if you go back a number of years. Okay, so we've been invaded. All right, let's see. What about drugs? Is it an active war where people are dropping dead? Yep. Every ounce of fentanyl, every pill, every ounce of meth that comes across the border, that is poison, and it is designed for one thing and one thing only: to kill you, make you unproductive, and destroy your society. Right? The profits that the cartels make, they're entrepreneurial. They could just start their own Federal Reserves or something, right? They're doing it because they want to kill you. There's nothing else to it. Okay. And they want, So we've got that going on. You've got a political, ideological invasion here. When Patrick Byrne calls the Marxist Bolsheviks, go study the Bolsheviks. He's not wrong, right? They're trying to take power for power's sake. we've got all of those factors going on. So maybe the military does have a role. I don't know. I'm just a peasant. I just have to live here. No matter what they do, I gotta live here. Right now, I personally have been the victim of the United States government. Right. So, for example, here is Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa. Iowa, it's in the news a lot today, talking about the Quiet Skies program. So we're going to hear just a moment about the Quiet Skies program, and then it's about time for us to head over to private, where we're going to talk more about the Quiet Skies program and how the Quiet Skies program, and then in private, I'm going to connect the dots on how you can become a terrorist too, without doing anything different in your personal life.
$200 million a year was spent on a program that was weaponized by the Biden administration to target political opponents, including patriotic veterans like former Congresswoman, now Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. The program covered over 180,000 flights since 2018 and did not stop a single terrorist attack, as many of you noted.
So 180,000 people put on this list. There were still terror attacks and incidents that happened on board planes that they didn't catch, and they basically got nothing for it. I was on that list. They put my wife on that list. Okay, so we're going to talk about that when we get into private. We're also going to be hearing from Senator Rand Paul and his take on the Comey indictment. We're going to be hearing a little bit about the left's take on Elon Musk and how they think he is an idiot. And we're also going to be hearing a little bit from Howard Lutnick, who used to be Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor, just a small clip from him. And then we are going to be hearing some more great news on the autism front, and more children are finding their words after taking this new medication that's been recommended by RFK and Donald Trump. So thank you for joining me today. A lot of you guys stuck with us. Before we finally sign out, I got you for just a few more seconds. Please, 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 everybody go in and say goodbye in the chat, right? In the live chat. I need live chatters. There's enough of you on here that if you all went in and chatted on Rumble right now, said hello, I wouldn't have to pimp for chats the rest of the month. I love having you guys chatting. Can't wait for Ron to get back so we can be a little bit more dynamic with it. But anyway, so please go leave a chat before we head out. Okay, since I asked for you guys to do something, I'll play this next video about the Quiet Skies. This is Senator Moreno, new senator from Ohio, who's talking about the Quiet Skies program and mentions J6ers.
If Congress passed a law called the Quiet Skies Law, what would the Supreme Court say?
They had the same substance as this.
Same substance. In other words, if we passed a law that said that the U.S. government can surveil American citizens who they suspect without any evidence of maybe committing a crime, and we passed that law, we all cheered and we passed it, and super bipartisan, and we threw a big party and had a ribbon cutting ceremony for the law and photo op, what would the Supreme Court say?
Well, two thoughts. One, we've seen past laws that aren't that different from that maybe, right? And so it's hard. And there is a balance, right? A policy balance. It's possible the Supreme Court, if it's not narrowly tailored enough, would invalidate that.
Because it's unconstitutional. Because we have a presumption of innocence in this country. Because if I decide not to wear a mask on an airplane because the rule is insanely stupid, I shouldn't be prohibited from ever flying again. If I want to travel to Washington, D.C., and I want to do whatever I want to do in Washington, D.C., that's well within the bounds of the law. That doesn't give any administrative agency the right to decide I can't fly somewhere else. It doesn't give the government the right to have somebody follow me and creep me out in the bathroom and decide whether I'm getting too many sugars in my coffee or if I'm going to the wrong yogurt place. And that report shouldn't be published inside some sort of official government document. Because, Mr. Chairman, there's a difference between somebody who has power because they're giving it to them because of some administrative things, or somebody actually real power. Somebody who has a badge, who has a gun, who has the ability to arrest you, has the ability to take your civil liberties away. That's what happened over the last 4 years. And Americans should be equally outraged about all this. It should not be partisan.
So the Quiet Skies Act was started out, what he's saying, as kind of administrative, that the idea was that, you'd put these people on watch lists, right? But what it turned into was it turned into a cudgel. Right? He's saying it turned in from administrative authority to true power, like a badge and a gun type of power where they can alter your life. And that's what they did. And there's no due process. So what they're talking about there is that it's kind of on its face unconstitutional because it presumes guilt and there's a punishment and you can't appeal it. the process to come off the quiet list, zero chance of doing that. The ability to get put on it, you can put on that for not wearing your mask on the airplane or flying to DC on January 6th. Okay. They put you on there for any reason, and you don't even know you're on it till you're missing flights. And there's no one to appeal to. There's no due process at all. Quiet skies list, totally abused. So when so I'm going to jump over to private now. I'm sure a lot of you Rumble guys are going to stick with us because you're all loyal premium subscribers. So I bid farewell to those that are in the public, and we'll see you guys in private. Goodbye, YouTube. One viewer over there. It's probably Ron. All right. We'll see you guys in private.